So we've been using the Canon C200s for just about a year, and we've gone through a couple of different lens changes over the course of that time, but for the most part have stayed to just this 5 lens setup. So I wanted to talk you through what 5 lenses we use on our camera and when we use each specific one. So the 5 lenses that we use are the Canon 16 to 35 f2.8 L3, the 50 1.2, the 24 1.4 Mark II, the 85 1.4, and the 70 to 200 2.8 L Mark III. That's really it. So we have 3 C200s, but these are really the only 5 lenses that we use between them all at any given time. But I thought we could walk you through a little bit more about how we specifically choose what lens for what we're shooting and why. So let's dive right into it. The first lens, and no question the lens that we prefer to use the most on this camera, is the 85 1.4 IS. And that is the reason we like to use it the most, because of the IS. Obviously, the C200 does not have any in-body image stabilization like most cinema cameras, but because of that, you are kind of limited to how steady you can keep the camera when you are off of a tripod or a monopod or some sort of stabilizer. So we really like to use this lens as often as possible because the image stabilization on the lens is good enough that you actually can do a lot of handheld stuff and get it pretty steady even though it's an 85mm lens. Obviously, an 85mm is just an absolutely gorgeous looking lens, and at 1.4 wide open, it's incredibly sharp, and the images that we get from it are just beautiful. So we really like using it. I like how big and bulky the lens is. There's already a lot of weight in the camera, so it's not that big of a deal that the lens itself is also heavy, but it's just a great size, and it has a really, really large focus ring, so when we are doing manual focus, we really can easily rack focus with it. It's just really comfortable to use. It's well built like all the L lenses, but it just does an outstanding job of being an all-around lens that when it's on, you can kind of get a little bit of everything. Obviously, it's not super wide, but depending on what we're shooting, it's very easy for us to back up and just get a wider shot, and we don't have to necessarily switch lenses to get wider, but we do have those options, obviously, when we need to. This is no question the lens that we use the most, and we try as much as we can to use this lens on every shoot because we just really love the look that it gives us. It's phenomenal for interviews, it's phenomenal for B-roll and random stuff that we're filming, and it just is a great lens for a little bit of everything if the focal length works for you. When this lens is a little bit too tight, we switch over to the Canon 50 1.2L, which is obviously a very popular lens in the Canon line. This one has been around for a while, and just, you know what you get from this lens was just a beautiful image. It's a great, great focal length. People love a 50mm because it's kind of an overall lens you can use for just about everything, because you can get wide enough, you can get a little bit tight if you want, but it just is a great lens. The 50 with its focus ring is just a little bit smaller than I prefer for handheld use. So I like the 85 a lot better, or the 24, which we're going to talk about, just from the physical dimensions of it as well. The focus ring is kind of small on this, but it's definitely still usable. We really like the 50mm when we kind of want a very good depth of field look for, let's say it's an interview or some sort of talking head thing or B-roll, but the 85 is just a little too tight for us. We like switching over to this lens because it still gives us almost the same type of image in terms of quality, but a little bit wider. Now, one obviously very important thing to note is that the 50 1.2 does not have any image stabilization, which can be a little tricky on the C200. Now, the 50 is wide enough that you can still get away with a lot of handheld stuff because the wider you are, the less you see movement anyway. But no question, when we switch to the 50, more times than not, we will grab a monopod or a tripod to just make sure that things stay nice and steady. We definitely like shooting a lot of our stuff nice and steady. We're not really big into the handheld look. So normally when we go to any lens that does not have IS, we try as much as we can to pop it on something, whether it's a tripod or a monopod, to just get it extra steady. I also really like using the 50mm for talking head stuff if we're doing like a one camera shoot and we want the ability to be able to crop in and post. So a lot of times if we're shooting an interview and we only are using one camera, depending on the kind of content it is, we will shoot in 4K on the C200 and shoot with the 50 and just crop it a little bit wider than we normally would. And then it allows us, when we actually crop in and post, to get two really nice angles, and it still looks really good because at f1.2 it's just a great looking image. So we really use it a lot for that, and it works really, really well for that. It just looks great. If the 50mm is a little bit too tight, then we switch over to the 24 1.4 Mark II. I've really grown to love this lens over the last year as we've had it. I use it every once in a while, even for vlogging, because of just how great the image is from it. But I really like it on the C200. I've grown to love wide angle stuff more and more because of just the images you can get while being able to capture more of your frame. We use this a lot if we're doing some run and gun stuff where we're just using some sort of microphone on top of the camera for like run and gun documentary style filmmaking that we do with some of our clients, where if we put our Schoeps microphone or our shotgun on top of the camera, this will give us a wide enough image where we can still get great audio, but yet it still has 1.4 and still can give you a really, really nice look for talking head style stuff, because even though it's a wide angle lens, it still has a pretty wide open aperture, which is great because you can get a little bit of everything in the frame, but still have flexibility to be able to obviously shoot with that. The 24mm is also the lens that we always will put on the C200 when we are putting it on a gimbal. So we can balance the C200 on a Ronin S, and we put the monitor off to the side. So the only thing on it is just the body and the actual lens itself. We will use this lens all the time for gimbal work. We just love what we can get from it. It's also really nice being able to use that when we're tracking somebody with the talking head thing on a gimbal, because it looks great. You get nice depth of field, but it's still wide enough that you're not having to worry about the subject obviously going out of the frame. So it's great for gimbal work as well. Now, every once in a while, if we want a wide shot, but we don't want to worry about having just a fixed wide shot, we will switch over to the 16 to 35. The 16 to 35 obviously gets wider than the 24, but it also will go in a little further than the 24 because it's 16mm, 35mm. So it's a really good, versatile wide angle lens. If you want to get really wide but be able to get a little bit tighter than the 24, it's really good for that. It's only a 2.8 aperture, so it's a little less shallow than the 24 1.4, but for a lot of wide angle stuff, you may not necessarily be looking for that anyway, so it's really, really nice for that. The 16 to 35 is a pretty big lens. As you can see, it really comes out of the camera a lot, but similar to what I said about the 85, I do like having the camera with a big lens on it because it's just easier to rack focus. It's just easier to have these big focus rings for it. So this is another really good lens for talking head stuff, similar to this type of thing on the C200, because it allows you to be able to have that nice wide angle shot during an interview, but be able to crop in a little bit or just be able to move a little bit past that 24mm mark if you want it tighter, or a little bit wider if you want it wider. So I think for most people, you probably would choose either the 16 to 35 or the 24, not necessarily both. The only reason I have both is because more times than not, this is actually the camera that I use personally for vlogging. So I probably wouldn't get the 16 to 35 if I didn't use it for vlogging, because the 24 most of the times is completely fine for what I want to use it for. If I really need to go a little wider, I can just back up. And if I need to go a little bit tighter, I can just go closer or switch to the lenses. So if I had to choose between wide angle, I would probably choose the 24 over the 16 to 35, but that's just my preference. Some people like a little bit of versatility in that wide angle, so you have to make the choice that works for you. And then if all those lenses that we're using are not quite tight enough because we're shooting something that requires a lot further of a shot, and we pop on the trusty 70 to 200 2.8L Mark III. And this lens is, anyone that knows Canon knows this is just a ridiculously good looking lens. This thing is just as sharp as they come. It's stabilized. It's 70 to 200mm, so it's tons of flexibility in what shot you can actually get from it. It's only an f2.8, but as you know, when you compress a lens all the way to 200 with 2.8, it's unbelievably beautiful and shallow for those who like really shallow depth of field. This lens obviously is not small whatsoever. You want to mount it on the actual 70 to 200 lens itself, not even on the body because of its weight. It is a stabilized lens, which is really nice, but you're probably not going to be using this with handheld very often because of the weight. So more times than not, we're using a monopod or a tripod regardless, but we use this lens simply when we want to get way further into whatever we're shooting. We would typically use this when we really want to maybe get reactions of people in some sort of B-roll setting, and we want to be able to get natural stuff and not have to be right up on them shooting. So it's great for that. It's also great that you can quickly pop back to 70 and have an entirely different focal length. So it's a really, really versatile lens in terms of the overall focal length, but obviously starting at 70 millimeters and on a C200 even more than that, it's obviously a little bit tighter than all the other lenses, so you may not use it a ton, and depending on the work you do, it may not necessarily be a lens that makes sense for you. But if you can get it in your bag, it's definitely one that you will love because it just has phenomenal results. So that is our lens setup. It's pretty simple, like just 5 lenses. Like I said, we have 3 different C200 bodies, so we really only will go between these 3, but it's just a little bit of everything that we would need. We have wide angle stuff when we need it. We have really tight stuff when we need it. We have really shallow lenses when we want that as well. We have some that are image stabilization, some that aren't. So it just has a lot of flexibility for the type of work we do, where any given shoot can be so different. It's not always predictable what type of stuff we're shooting. So we like to have a little bit of flexibility in the whole range. And we like having flexibility of prime lenses and also some that have, variable focal lengths as well, like the 70 to 200 or the 16 to 35. If I had to put them in order of the #1 lens that I would not want to get rid of for the C200, it would be the 85-1.4. This is no question my favorite lens. I absolutely love this thing. It's built like a tank, and if you own this lens, you will completely see why I love this lens so much. But that's probably not the one lens that everyone would choose, because 85 obviously is a little tighter than normal. So maybe something like the 50 would make more sense. Some people could even get away with the 24 millimeter, depending on what you're shooting. But you have to get the lenses that make the most sense for you, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to get the lenses that make sense for the type of stuff that you shoot and not just what everyone else has. So we've been really, really happy with this setup. The lenses and the cameras combined have just produced a gorgeous image for us, and we're huge fans. So I always like knowing what different people use and why they love it. So comment below, tell me what is your absolute favorite lens for your C200 or even Canon or Sony, whatever you shoot. Maybe you're just watching this video because you're curious about lens setups. Tell me your favorite lens and why you love it so much. And thanks for watching.